All right, we are going tonight to do something a little different. If you've looked at the post, I had my lesson already. It's almost completed, and I had several calls and conversations with people about Halloween and what did I think and da-da-da. And I thought, well, you know what? This is the perfect time to go through it. It gives you some time. It gives you an opportunity that if you have small kids, if you have family members, that you can be equipped to make a decision and then show them biblically why you made these decisions. If you look at that sheet you have, we basically could, and I printed enough of them in case you wanted to take a couple with you. If you just read down this list of scripture, it would be crystal clear. It would answer the question of should Christians celebrate Halloween. It's just crystal clear. It actually, on the money hits some of the stuff. You go, should I do this? Should we do that? And the Bible tells us directly and indirectly how we should do it, how we should approach Halloween. So I look real quick. I think the first slide is Ephesians 5:7. It says, don't participate in the things which people do. For though your heart were once full of darkness, now you are full of light from the Lord, and your behavior should show it. For this light within you produces only what is good and right and true. Here it is. Try to find out what is pleasing to the Lord. Take no part in the worthless deeds of the evil and darkness. Instead, rebuke and expose them. So this is what the word says. The word says take no part of evil, rebuke it, and expose it. So this is exactly what we're doing tonight. First, I want to give you a little history on the origins of Halloween. I'm going to read most of this. Don't fade off because it's really good stuff. But a lot of it is straight from resource sites. I haven't written any of this. I think it was one little paragraph I did. But a lot of this is from Roman history and Greek history and just several other spots that I've hit. So I wanted to read it to you because I think you're going to be amazed that how long this festival that we're going to talk about has been into its existence. It's just crazy. All right, so let's begin. The Druids or the Celts are believed to be the founding fathers of many of the cult activities associated with Halloween. I am making some really funny noise. Can y'all hear it? Let me read that again. The Druids or the Celts are believed to be the founding fathers of many of the cult activities associated with Halloween. Their major celebrations were marked by the seasons. The Druids were members of a priestly elite class in Britain, Ireland, and Scotland during the Iron Age. In fact, until I get up to the point to where I'm talking about how it came into the United States, this is all going to be in this area, Ireland, Scotland, and Britain. This is where it originated, especially in Ireland. Since the Druids did not believe in writing down their knowledge, we have to search the history books to see what other nations or historians say about them. They were a very mystic kind of superstitious group, and they went, no, we're not going to write any of it down. It's just to be word of the mouth. So everything that we've got of the Druids is from other people, but that's a good source too, because the Romans were excellent historians, and they would just write and write and write. If you remember Josephus, he was a Christian, but he worked for the Roman government, and he wrote down history. So this is what the Greek and Romans said. The Greek and Roman historians frequently make reference to the Druids as practitioners of human sacrifice. According to Caesar, we all know Caesar, those who had been found guilty of theft or other crime offenses were considered preferably for use as sacrificial victims. But when the criminals were short supply, innocence would be accepted. Put that first slide up, y'all. A form of sacrifice recorded by Caesar was the burning alive of victims in a large wood effigy, now known as the Wicker Man. I don't know how good you can see that, but that is not straw sticking out of his body. Those are humans. Those are sacrifice. They would build these huge things, and like it said, if they had enough prisoners to fill it, they did. If they didn't, you don't want to be around them. The classical Latin account from the 10th century, Comita Berenice, this is just a big book of Greek commentaries about a lot of things, states that the Druids sacrificed to their god I think it's Tuates, anytime they sacrificed to him, it would be by drowning. Essus, it would be by hanging. And Tyrannus, by burning. Diodorus Siculus was a biblical historian from 30 to 60 BC that recorded in his writing that a sacrifice acceptable to the Celtic gods had to be attended by a druid, for they were the intermediaries between the people and the gods. He remarked about the importance of prophets in the druid ritual. This is what they said. These men predict the future by observing the flight and calls of birds and by the sacrifice of holy animals. All orders of society are in their power. And in very important matters, they prepared a human victim, plunging a dagger into his chest. By observing the way his limbs convulse as he falls and the gushing of his blood, they were able to read the future. Wouldn't want to be a group there, would y'all? So how are the Druids connected to the Halloween customs? According to history, at the end of the year in northern Europe, people made preparations for a long, hard winter by harvesting crops and separating the herds to slaughter the animals that wouldn't make it. This was not like us now. If we have a cold, hard winter, we can go to the grocery stores, we can prepare. They couldn't prepare. Everything they had, they would go through and divide their livestock, get everything they can, and if winter was short, they would make it. If it was longer than they expected, they would not like it. So there was a lot of death, a lot of darkness associated with this time. Winter brought darkness, shortened days, and longer nights and deaths. The imagery of death, symbolized by skeletons and skulls and the color black, remained prominent in today's Halloween celebration. Go to the next slide. The largest festival for the Druids was Samhain. It was the festival of the dead. It celebrated the final harvest, the death, and the onset of winter for 3 days. We know exactly when it happened. It happened around, this festival was October 31st to November 2nd. And the reason we know that is because the Catholic Church comes in later and tries to stick Christian holidays right in the middle of these pagan holidays, hoping maybe that they could get all the people that they're new converts to quit all the pagan activities and just do the Christian activities. And it rarely, if ever, worked. What it ended up was the Christians just sort of pulled in some of all the pagan ideas and planted it. And we'll talk about that in just a little bit. This is interesting. The Celts believed the curtain dividing the living and the dead lifted during Samhain to allow the spirits of the dead to walk among the living, ghost haunting the earth. Sound familiar? They would celebrate the season of haunting by participating in practices such as divination, which is fortune teller, and communicating with the dead in seances and so forth. They sought divine spirits, we know as demons, and the spirits of their ancestors regarding weather forecasts for the coming year, crop expectations, and even romantic prospects. It's funny because I was reading, and bobbing for apples was actually a ritual. Like if you had a couple come and they wanted to know what the gods thought about, if they were compatible or whatever, they would bob for apples. I vote that back. What y'all think? You come in for kind, and we'd say, go get us a pail and a bunch of apples. We're going to see if you guys are compatible. But it was superstition. They were deep in superstition. To commemorate the event, the Druids built huge sacred bonfires where the people gathered to burn crops and the animals as sacrifices to the Celtic deities. During the celebrations, the Celts wore costumes, typically consisting of animal heads and skins, and attempted to tell each other's fortunes. Now, from all this stuff, there was a lot of beliefs that they took from this. These beliefs gave way to general superstitions about the dead. And you know what? It's funny that that long ago, people still talk about these beliefs now. They believed spirits were earthbound until they received a proper send-off with treats, possessions, wealth, food, and drink. Spirits who were not treated were tricked. Spirits who were not treated would trick those who had neglected them. These spirits were believed to assume grotesque appearances. Some traditions developed which believed wearing a costume to look like a spirit would fool the wandering spirits. Others believed the spirits could be warded off by carving a grotesque face into a gourd or a root vegetable. The Scottish used turnips, and turnips are little small things, and setting a piece of coal inside of it, which eventually became the jack-o'-lantern. The Irish immigrants brought with this concept of Halloween to America. The legend of Irish Jack explains the jack-o'-lantern. Here's the thing, or here's the, what did I call it? Legend. A stinky drunk named Jack tricked the devil into climbing an apple tree for an apple, but then cut the sign of a cross into the trunk of the tree to prevent the devil from coming down. Jack then forced the devil to swear he would never come after Jack's soul. The devil reluctantly agreed. Jack eventually died, but he was turned away at the gates of heaven because of his drunkenness and life of selfishness. He was sent to the devil, who also rejected him, keeping his promise. Since Jack had no place to go, he was condemned to wander the earth. As he was leaving hell, he happened to be eating a turnip. The devil threw a live coal at him. He put the coal inside the turnip and has since forever been roaming the earth with his jack-o'-lantern in search of a place to rest. Eventually, like I said, a turnip, if any of you have seen a turnip, it's kind of hard to carve and it's smaller. And eventually the pumpkins were just replaced because it was easy to carve and you could just put the coal. Currently, witches use hollowed out gourds and skulls as a light during their ritual. I don't know how many people I've had conversation with this about, and when I talked about witches, they like roll their eyes like witches are only, on TV and whatever. But I tell you, I have a friend of mine that lived in Las Vegas, and he said that if you went out and took a walk through the desert or whatever, that you would frequently run up on sites where they had but they had sacrificed something. And he said it wasn't just a few. He said they were scattered all over the place. It's kind of interesting. It's a dry, hot area. That's what they're used to. As Christianity moved through Europe, it collided with pagan customs and holidays. To deal with the problem, the organized church, or the Catholic Church really, would commonly move a distinctively Christian holiday to a spot on the calendar that would directly challenge a pagan holiday. The intent was to counter pagan influence and provide a Christian alternative. But most of the time, the church only succeeded in Christianizing some of the pagan rituals. The ritual was still pagan. That's what happened in All Saints' Eve. All Saints' Eve was the original Halloween alternative. Let me make sure you understand that. What the church would do was they would come in to a group that they had, what's the word? Converted, yeah. Really hard word. Yeah, they had gone into where they converted, and the customs and the festivals were so ingrained into their everyday life or into their lives that they would try to put a Christian holiday right in the middle of it, again, thinking that maybe they would quit celebrating and maybe move into being true Christians. Pope Gregory IV reacted to the pagan challenge by moving the celebration of All Saints' Day in the 9th century. He set the date at November 1st, right in the middle of Samhain. Remember, Samhain's this big Halloween kind of festival where they did sacrifices and just, there was, you could go to seances. It was just all these things. But the thing about that is that they weren't just playing games. They were actually calling up demons and asking about, is this a good year to grow, I don't know, turnips? Is this a good year? So they use this as a part of their everyday life. The name Halloween comes from the All Saints' Day celebration of the early Christian church, a day set aside for martyrs. All Hallows Eve, the evening before All Saints' Day, began the time of remembrance. It'd be like Christmas Eve. This is All Hallows Eve and All Saints' Eve. All Hallows Eve was eventually contracted to Halloween. Newly converted Christians found family and cultural influence hard to withstand. They were tempted to rejoin the pagan festivals, especially Samhain. As centuries passed, Samhain and all the Hallow Eve mixed together. And although the people began to understand through Christianity that the spirits were demons and the diviners were practicing witchcraft, the festival and the partying that came with it was just too much fun. Part of the Samhain ritual was something that may sound really familiar to you. Groups of young thugs would go house to house, gathering food and drink for their parties. Stingy householders ran the risk of trick by being played on their property from the drunken young people. Halloween didn't become an American holiday until the Irish immigrated to America during the Great Potato Famine. While early immigrants may have believed the superstitious traditions, it was the mischievous aspect of the holiday that attracted American people. The trick-or-treat custom we know today is thoroughly American. In the 19th century, when Irish and Scottish immigrants brought their Halloween traditions to North America, the night became an occasion for pranks and mischief. Vandals would go through the night, soaping windows, overturning outhouses, and pulling gates from their hinges. These pranks were playfully said to be the works of witches and ghosts, but in the 1920s, the joke wasn't funny anymore. The damage to neighborhood was mounting. To counter Halloween vandalism, community clubs like the Boy Scouts began to organize alternatives that are safe and fun. Children were encouraged to go door to door and receive treats from homeowners and merchants, keeping the troublemakers away. By the 1930s, the practice was popular nationwide, and young voices crying trick-or-treat were echoed through neighborhoods and streets. And then Hollywood, had to put their spin on it with the vampires and the werewolves and the mummies and the psychopaths. So that is the history of Halloween. So what do you do with that? What was the purpose of tracking that? And the purpose that I want you to understand is to understand that Halloween has stayed true to its roots throughout. It brings fear. I tell you, I'm sure one of my nephews is watching this, but I can remember when him and his brother, both of my nephews were little, they were petrified at Halloween. And you can't help but I can remember there was a guy that came walking down the street, and he had like this hatchet that was buried in his head and the blood, and they were petrified. They would not have anything to do with Halloween. And I thought, you know what? No wonder. Why would you celebrate a holiday that is just engrafts you into fear, into darkness, into psychopaths, into demons, all these things? Do you think that the Word of God says, it's okay, it's okay? No, it does not. In fact, we're going to read the whole sheet right here of all the scriptures that say just that. 2 Timothy 1:7 says, for God has not given us a spirit of fear. You hear that? But of a power and of love and a sound mind. Now, some people, too, I have this one person that says this every year to me. They say, well, yeah, but, Christmas and Easter, they have a pagan qualities to it. Like, Christmas has Santa Claus. But Christmas to a Christian is the birth of Jesus Christ. And actually, Santa Claus is really an old fortload that came from the Germans. And it was just this nice guy that went through the town, and I'm shortening it, went through the town giving people gifts right around Christmas. They didn't have enough money. And so his name was St. Nicholas, turned into Santa Claus. That's what we use. In fact, when my kids were little, it's funny because I've reminisced a lot of this because my family thought I was in a cult for sure because, number one, I homeschooled when nobody homeschooled. And then all of a sudden one year I went, we're not doing Halloween. And then the next year I was like, we're not doing Christmas. We're not doing Santa Claus. So they were thought, she's gone, she's lost it. But I tell you, again, Easter's the same way. Actually, Easter is a fertility god. We really should start calling it Resurrection Day because that's what it's about. Easter is about the resurrection of Jesus Christ. But what you have to understand is these two holidays are not grounded in the devil. They're not grounded in fear. They are Christian holidays. Now, these little pagan things can come in, but my kids are not scared at Christmas. Corey was. Yeah. There's a story, my family's going to laugh. My story that Corey and Tanner both actually, neither one of them ever liked Santa Claus. You couldn't get them, in the mall where they would set them up. And Tanner wouldn't even go down the aisle. He would I don't want to go anywhere near them. And then years later, I'd go, why are y'all so scared of Santa Claus? And then years later, Corey finally told me it was because the thought of some guy in the middle of the night coming down the chimney and going in their house just wigged him out. And I went, okay, check. I get that. But you know what? After a while, after I was convicted about it, we didn't do Santa Claus. Santa Claus is not a demon. It's just the thought that I spent all that time and money into pouring into those gifts and saving, and cause especially when you're young and you have all these kids, I don't want him getting credit for it. I mean, we spent the money, and it wasn't Christian at all either. And I will say this, and I know a lot of you've probably heard this story, but I'll tell you another one on Lacey. Aaron gets off free this week. that when I finally had to tell Lacey, and Lacey was very trusting, let's put it that way, that she had come home, I think, from school and said, Mama, they said there's no Santa Claus. And so we finally had to sit down and tell her. And you know what the first thing out of her mouth was? Does that mean there's no Jesus? Because we had basically told her, lied to her about Santa Claus. And so her first thought was what? And I went, oh my gosh. I didn't even see that as a deception, but it is. It is. So you got to be very careful what you pour into your kids, even if it's socially acceptable. So I told you all that to show you that Halloween has remained to its true roots. Now, another Christian defense about getting all dressed for Halloween and doing Halloween is people say, we don't get in all the scary stuff. My kid's going to be a princess, and Spider-Man and Superman. But I have to ask you, are you celebrating in a Christian holiday? Is it logically, it makes no sense. Even if you take your child and you put them in a Jesus uniform, with all that, and send them out into a demonic holiday, it does not get you unchecked. It doesn't matter. This is a holiday that you should have nothing to do with. It is evil. It is death. It is darkness. It is fear. I don't even keep the TV on during this time because, you can't even watch a Reese's Cup commercial. They've got it to where it's so demonic. You just cut it. I just cut it off. Cut it on when I want a show, cut it off. I know I'm old school, still got cable, still watch TV. But the whole month is full of gore and killing. And again, 2 Timothy 1:7 says, For I've not given you a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. Philippians 4:8-9 says, Finally, brethren, whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are honest, whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are of good report, if there be any virtue, and if there be any praise, think on these things. So as for me and my family, we don't celebrate Halloween. Now let me back up in case some of you out there are celebrating in the process. Already bought your costumes, any of you. Don't get condemned. Understand that God is giving you a revelation that now you can act on. Because I remember my kids did Halloween for years and years and years. But I was thinking, the day as I was thinking through all this, I was thinking, wow, it just hit me that not long after I was baptized in the Holy Ghost, it started bothering me. I remember the first holiday, the first Halloween that came around, it was, the Holy Ghost was just saying, don't do it. But I was so in it. I didn't want to argue with all my family. Again, we weren't doing Christmas at the time. I was Santa Claus. I was homeschooling. I was thinking this is too much for their minds. And so I just kind of fought myself through it. But I was so convicted. Everywhere I looked, I saw death. I saw blood. My kids were scared to death. The movies scared them. It was just totally fear. But that next year, I was prepared. And a lot of people say, oh, God, I just feel like my kids are just going to be so deprived and they're going to be so sad and they won't be able to dress up and all that. It's the perfect opportunity to take your scripture and say, you know what? God says that we are to be set apart, that we are to be different. We are not to do the things of the world. Everything they do, we are not to do because we are special. You pour into them. That's why I did this so early. I could have waited till the week before, but I want you to get into that. I want you to get your scriptures down, which is what I gave you, and talk to them. Your kids are smarter than you know. And their spirits are starving. Their spirits will totally understand. And I'm telling you, my kids never said a word. When I showed the scriptures that I'm going to read to you later, they knew. Even Tanner and Corey, which were a lot younger, they understood. What I would suggest you do if you live in a neighborhood, just go do something. Go to somebody's house, that lives a little further out. We didn't have to worry about it because, you came to my neighborhood at night and rang my door, you're probably going to get shot because I live out in the woods. But, take them out. I believe the first couple years, I think Michael's parents and mine, and we all went out to eat and then, came back when everything had kind of calmed down. So take this opportunity. It's a great opportunity to pour into your kids. They are stronger. And if you as a family stand, if you explain it to them, and I'm telling you, if you have somebody, guaranteed there's going to be that one person and say, are you okay? Have you joined a cult? I mean, what are you doing? But if you take it off of I think and you put it on that scripture and go, read the scripture right there. What do you think? Should we be doing Halloween? Put it on the Word. Put the emphasis on the Word because they can't dispute the Word. Your argument is not going to convince them. They already think you're crazy. You're Pentecostal. You're not doing Santa Claus. They already think. And y'all, they did. They thought I was just, but you know what? I was on fire, man. The Lord had told me a long time ago, I want you to separate your kids. I want your kids to be anointed. They will be a dynasty. Not in a dynasty as rich, but in a dynasty of where they will carry on exactly what you and your husband are doing. I knew that's why I had homeschooled them. And I see it now. I see the fruits. And they have kids, and they'll have kids, and they'll have kids. That's what he was talking about. They don't need to be full of fear. They need to be full of power. Now, go just page through some of those pictures. I can remember. There's a guy down the street from us. I swear, I'm pretty sure he had a gate, and it was like walking into the gates of hell. And I remember thinking, oh my God, what am I doing? Sending my kids into the gates. Look at that. Is that peace? Huh? Does that give you strength? No, it scares the mess out of you. It's full of fear. So should I participate in a holiday that has fear as the very foundation of it? Romans 12:2 says, do not be conformed to this world. You can take it off anytime. Romans 12:2 says, do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that by testing you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect. 2 Corinthians 6:17 says, come out from them and be separate. Touch no unclean thing. Again, I just hit on this again too, but do understand that there will be persecution. Because if your whole family does Halloween and you're not doing Halloween, they're going to come at you. But understand that is persecution. And you have to stand strong and believe that you're doing the right thing. And you are. You are protecting your children. And there may be some of them just roll their eyes, make fun of you, whatever. Don't worry about it. Every Christian has gone through that. That is mild persecution. But you need to have the strength to overcome it. Let's read some of these scriptures. If you got your sheets, everybody got a sheet? I'm going to read through them because I could have probably just read these and be nothing else and do nothing else. Deuteronomy 18:9-14 says, do not learn to imitate detestable ways, including spiritists, sorcerers, and witchcraft. Well, let's go home now. That's pretty much it. Ephesians 5:11 says, have nothing to do with the fruitless deeds of darkness. Live as children of light. 3 John 1 says, do not imitate what is evil. Ephesians 2:1 says, there is a spiritual world filled with goodness from God and evil from Satan. 1 Thessalonians 5, test everything. Hold on to the good. Avoid every kind of evil. James 1:27, keep oneself from being polluted by the world. Romans 12:9 says, abhor what is evil. Cling to what is good. 1 Timothy 4, don't follow deceiving spirits and things taught by demons. If that doesn't checkmark Halloween, that's all it's about. 2 Corinthians 6:14, what fellowship can light have with darkness? 1 Corinthians 10:31, whatever you do, do everything for the glory of God. Are you glorifying God on Halloween night? James 4:7, submit yourself to God. Resist the devil, purify your hearts. I want to tell you one thing too, though, that I can remember when the first year that I said we're not going to do Halloween, and my kids were really fine with it, but I had some people that loved us and cared about us, wanted to do a big bag candy and give it to them, and I said, you know what? I don't want you to do that. I want you to keep it. I want them to understand that this is a sacrifice. If I give them the candy, it was like partaking of it kind of on the sideway. No, we are not having anything to do with it. I'll tell you too, you will be surprised if you take a meeting with teachers, they'll understand. They will. I remember coming to when Aaron, when I took them out for homeschooling, Aaron was in the 6th grade and Lacey was in the 4th grade. And Lacey had this one teacher that was notorious for her Halloween classroom. I mean, it was like it was like walking into hell. I mean, it was like, you walked in. It was just scary. And so about a month before, I called her, and I was really nice about it. I said, we're Christians. I want to go, we're real Christians. We're Christians. And, I just really don't want Lacey to partake of any of that. I don't want her to have to come in there. And on Halloween, they would have this big parade. Excuse me. Where they would walk through the halls. And I said, you know what? I'm just going to keep her home, for that day. I didn't make a big deal of it. This is my belief. It's not her belief. I wouldn't get a pound her over with it. And she called me about a week before, and she said, you know what? I'm gonna size this down a little bit. I do have this big witch that I'm gonna put in the, right here in the back, but I'm just not gonna do it. All because I called. I didn't attack her. I didn't say she was a old demon lady with her gates to hell. I just said, you know what? We don't do this. And she said, you know what? I understand. I totally understand. And she didn't go. We didn't make, none of the kids didn't make a big deal out of it. But they understood this is not something we were going to partake in. This was something that we're going to refrain from. And you don't go back out it with one more story. I remember Titus, what was it, last year at Halloween? All the decorations might have been in the house. In Walmart, it's like big dragons and all that. He walked in, and guy, it was so loud. He said, Mama, why are these people worshiping devil? What are they doing worshiping the devil? And we were like, shut up. That's a pure heart. It's a pure heart. Ezekiel 44:23. Teach my people to distinguish between the unclean and the clean. That's what we're doing. Proverbs 22:6, train a child in the way he should go, and he will never depart. Hosea 4:6, my people are destroyed for their lack of knowledge. John 3:19, fallen man loves darkness instead of light. Romans 13:12, put aside the deeds of darkness and put on the armor of light. John 8:12, Jesus said, I am the light of the world. I am the power of the world. Whoever follows me will not walk in darkness, but will have the light of light. Ephesians 6:11, take your stand against the devil's schemes. I'm telling you, Halloween is the devil's schemes. Don't be fooled into think it's just some popcorn kind of holiday. Oh no, there's a motive to it. 1 Peter 5:8, be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary, the devil, walks about like a roaring lion, seeking who he may devour. After observing firsthand the amount of destruction that the enemy can bring in people's lives when they give him a foothold, I'm even more convinced that not celebrating Halloween is the right decision to close the door to the enemy on this evil holiday. Halloween glorifies evil! Exclamation point. Amen? Again, I left some sheets out there if you guys want to take it with you and give it to anyone. Study them and know